Okay, migrating over to Canadian Medtech landscape, here's some information from HTX, which is a Toronto-based organization that basically tells us where the industry is. Guess what? It's in Ontario. And that big circle is Ontario, and then just to the right, that's Montreal, and way off to the left, of course, is us. And that really is the industry. Everybody else is a little spot on the map, basically, by comparison. And the number one category is electromechanical device companies, followed by diagnostic devices. So I give you some idea. That will also be reflected in some IP data I'll show you in a minute. Unfortunately, we don't have data more new than 2009 that's published by Industry Canada, or maybe Neil has some better data. I'm sure you do, but nonetheless shows that there's this major deficit in medical devices out of Canada. That there's roughly, as of 2009, roughly $5 billion a year that we were buying and about $2.5 billion that we were selling. So I have data from 2012 that basically says that the trend is continuing. I suspect that's what we're seeing now. So, but I'm hopeful that we're building enough critical mass that that story will start to shift. And what is it that we're selling? Here's the top 10 things. Number one thing is reagents. Turns out that's the number one thing we import as well. Then the number two thing is furniture. That's kind of embarrassing. That's the best thing we can do is make furniture. Then we get into instruments and appliances, $125 million. That's smaller than any big size American company. So we can do a little better. Here's a little synopsis of some of the, I would consider, successful companies we've had in our industry, homegrown companies. A lot of these are BC and a lot of them are Ontario. On the bottom right there is Mitroflow, which is now a piece of Sorin. So it still has a big manufacturing plant in Burnaby. Visual Sonics is a Toronto company doing micro ultrasounds. Cryocath is a great company, sold to Medtronic for $400 million-ish. That was developed out of Montreal that had this crazy idea of a cryo fluid going inside the heart to ablate it. It's the most ridiculous idea in the world, but it works amazingly well. Christie Medical is actually an old TV company, became a projector company, world leader, which decided to become a medical device company. Sentinel, you may know, is a breast MRI company based out of Toronto that sold to Hologic out of Boston. Unfortunately moved the company basically out of Toronto. So there's a lot of that. But I think what's encouraging is some of these guys are sticking. Like Novadak is a homegrown company, actually was a first-time entrepreneur, a grad student, a guy named Rick Mangat, and I know there was more to the story, who took the lead on that company. And it's public. It's now, I think, as of yesterday, it had a value of market cap of $600 million or so. And they just built a giant R&D center in Burnaby, so they're committing to the long haul to having a domestic company. And I did some research that I wrote some articles on last year about how do successful serial medical device entrepreneurs get their start. And turns out that out of the study that I did, 50 leading serial medtech entrepreneurs, 14% of them actually got their start by being entrepreneurs. All the rest of them got their start by getting a job in corporate, learning the ropes, and then going out and starting a medical device company. The problem is we don't have any of those in Canada, right? So there's this critical mass issue that we've had historically, that there's nowhere to learn how to develop a medical device company. I mean, we've got Medtronic does a great job at teaching you how to sell medical devices in Canada, but there has been limited opportunity through that corporate or in the other big branch plants to learn how to develop a device. But Cryocath still has a major operation in Montreal. Novadak has a major operation here. Ultrasonics was bought, but they still have a major operation here. Baylis has grown slowly. This is out in Mississauga. And they just committed to and built a giant new manufacturing plant out by the airport in Toronto. So I think that some of these guys are sticking, which is going to allow some future entrepreneurs to learn the ropes, and that's going to create the critical mass. So that's my optimistic vision of and here's some of the things that they're doing now. Some of the companies, like you saw Udi talk about Inliant, that's a dental navigation company. Cardium, we have people here. It's a very exciting company, class 3, crazy, complicated spherical catheter doohickey that maps out the atrium and then does atrial fibrillation therapy. Neovasc, which is doing the Tiara mitral prosthesis. Rostrum, we had Auni here. Aegis Conavi was one of the guys. Brian Courtney spoke at our conference in Toronto, doing this crazy 3-dimensional ultrasound imaging probe for inside a beating heart. Clarius, I don't know if we have anybody here from Clarius, but it's basically a handheld ultrasound machine where all of the guts are right in the probe itself. These are some pretty cool companies. So, I think that the interesting part is almost everybody on that first chart that I showed you, all was first-time entrepreneurs who got lucky. And I can tell you that from studying this, that the statistics on success of an entrepreneur on their second or third venture are way higher than the first time. And these guys are all the ones who have learned from their first venture and have moved on to do their second or third venture now. So it gives me some optimism that we're into a better spot.